We are on. We're beginning a new chapter to close out another week, Baruch Hashem, of learning not Hilchos, but learning Tefillah in its very essence, 5 minutes a day. And we're beginning a chapter we spent a long time discussing Rina. I shouldn't say a long time, every day, how many tefillahs of Rina, of songs, of praises, of Maidim, of Psukim Zimra, of Nishmas. How many times a day do we pause and we say, Baruch Hashem, thank you Hashem? How many times a day should we pause and take in and realize how thankful we must be? So it's true, we gave many Shearim and Rina, but in reality, it can never end. As we say every day in Nishmas, the if our mouth was as full and we would keep on saying praises, we would never ever end. But as everything goes, when you learn, you got to turn the page and you got to continue, you got to keep on going. So the next form of tefillah is pigiyah. Pigiyah, coming from the pasuk in Yirmiyahu that says, V'ata al tispalel ba'adam azev al tisa ba'adam rino tefillah va'al tifka bi. And the way to translate this is pigiyah is a relentless plea, a relentless asking and asking. Akshanos, being stubborn. That child that comes to his father, comes to his mother and says, Mommy, Daddy, Abba, Ima, can I have an ice cream? I say, no, I'm sorry, it's 7 o'clock at night, it's bedtime. Please go upstairs to your bed. And a moment later, the child turns around and says, can I now have ice cream? And again, and you carry the child upstairs and you put the kid in the bed, can I have ice cream? Stop asking. I told you it's no ice cream. And the kid keeps on asking. And eventually, often, what does a parent do? The parent says, you know what? Just have your ice cream and then you'll go to sleep. When we turn our tefillos into a pigiyah, into a relentlessly bombarding, asking, pleading to Hashem, says Rav Shimshon Pincus, quoting the pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Hashem just can't say no at that moment. You lavakish oid and oid, more and more, until kaviyachol Hashem has no menucha, Hashem has no shalva, Hashem has nowhere to pause because all we're doing is asking. And finally, what does Hashem say? Hashem says He gives in. And the Shimshon Pincus teaches us, where do we learn this from? The pasuk by Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Beis explains that Moshe Rabbeinu kaviyachol tafsu la'Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kaviyachol, whatever that means, Moshe Rabbeinu grabbed onto Hashem. Ke'adam shu toifes es chaveiroi, like a person grabbing his friend bebigdoi from his garment. V'amar lefanav, and he says to Hashem, Rebbeinu shalaylam, ein ani manichecha, I am not letting go. Ached timchal v'tislach lahem, until you give Klal Yisrael a kapara, until you forgive them from their sins. And that was the incredible tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem, V'ata ani chali. And we see that it comes the point, Yitzchak Avinu, the Psukim teach us, V'ye'etar, the same lashon, the same wording of asking. And we find countless Maimrei Chazal in which we are learning that when you ask Hashem without stopping, there comes a point that our loving Father says, okay, I'll give in to you. And He says over here, like the Kedoshim He calls them, like the Tzaddikim, when they need something, what do? They daven and they daven until they finally get from Hashem what they want. But we conclude with the very important words, and I believe there was a very famous story with a general in the Israeli army, General Waxman, who was killed, he was murdered, and all of Klal Yisrael was davening, and people were wondering what's going on. I don't understand, how is it possible, how is it shaykh that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said no? All of Klal Yisrael was sitting there davening, and his father famously got up at the Levaya. And everyone was wondering, how could it be? What happened to the lashon of pigiyah, of relentlessly asking of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And the father got up, and the father said, you know what it is? It's true. You could be that kid that asks incessantly for the ice cream, but you know what? There's some times that the father knows, let's say it's a child, that if he has the ice cream, he's not going to fall asleep for 3 hours, and then he's going to get sick. Sometimes the father has to say no. And says of Shimshon Pinkius, and we pick up from here, that of course we could relentlessly bombard Hashem with tefillos, but we always have to know in the back of our mind that our loving Father knows best. And if He decides to say no, the reason is because He knows that's what's best for us. Chevra, have a fabulous day.